Hey, it's the Paul Chandler Show. And hey, it's me, Paul Chandler. In tonight's episode, we're going to learn about excisions and closures. Because when we're coding them, there's something called bundling. And bundling is when you have one procedure code, but there's more than one item in it. And if you unbundle it, then you're trying to get paid more money by breaking down the codes. So with the excisions and closures, there's certain rules we have to follow based on what type of closure is done, but also what type of excision is done. So stay tuned, and when we come back, I'll be showing you an awesome grid that you can add to your coding book for notes on excisions and closures. And welcome back. So tonight's episode, we're going to learn how to code excisions and closing up the skin, because how it's documented is not always how the coding is done. So what I'm going to do is on the board here, on the left side, so two separate columns, I'm going to be putting down how the documentation will have the order going as far as how the procedure is actually being done. But then on the right side, how we do the coding for it. So I say that when we're doing medical coding, always leave your common sense at home, because sometimes things just don't make sense. So with this example of the excisions and then the closures of it, we have two different types of closures we can do. Repair closure, which is the doctor just takes let's say we have a skin, we have a hole of it, obviously not this big, but for camera purposes. So repair closure, we have the circle, and the doctor takes the skin, squishes it together, put a line of sutures up and down, and that's it. But then we have what's also called an adjacent tissue transfer rearrangement. Yes, these do get kind of wordy, but in the adjacent tissue transfer rearrangement, let's say my fist here is the whole of skin, so we have skin still like all the way around. What the doctor can do is either in a straight line, let's say if you do the adjacent tissue transfer, we have, let's say this is 1 centimeter worth of skin. The doctor can take, say, 2 centimeters worth of skin, make 2 incisions. So my right hand here, the flap, is the skin, the 2 centimeters. The doctor can take it, and instead of doing the repair closures, we're going to squish it, line sutures, to close up the skin then, 1 centimeter hole, say 2 centimeter excision, that we have to then make into the skin, and then stretch it over to make it 3 centimeters. So by taking the incision of 2 centimeters, now we have 2 centimeters worth of skin, stretching it to cover 3 centimeters of our body. It can be in a straight line or a curve, still different options there. So as far as the coding though, that first of all, if a doctor has a repair closure, that's simple. So how I'm going to be putting it is R/C, parentheses S, that means repair closure simple. If the doctor is only doing a repair closure that's simple, then as far as coding, we're going to code a repair closure that is simple, and that's it. And so it's getting tricky though when we start doing excisions. So let's say if the documentation states that we do an excision, so do EXC for excision. The doctor does an excision, then does a repair closure that is simple. As far as coding it, we only code the excision. And this can get tripped up a lot because yes, the provider is doing both. The doctor is doing the excision, and then we do a simple repair closure, but we only code the excision because even though the excision codes, whether it be a benign malignant lesion, for example, even though the excision codes do not state in them includes simple repair closure, it's always built into it. It's bundled into it because the provider, the doctor, is not going to cut open the skin to remove whatever and then just have the whole of skin in the body until the patient, okay, now go home and put a Band-Aid on it. Get a good lawyer, get a new doctor if that ever happens. They're going to close up the skin. So if it's done the most basic way possible, the simple level of repair closure, so this is bundled into every single code, that way we're not having to do 2 codes every single time. So even though we are coding only the excision, it's always including a simple repair closure in it. But there's 3 different types that we can do: the simple, intermediate, and complex. So if the doctor does an excision, but then has to do the repair closure that is intermediate, Then we flip it around. We code the repair closure first. So we code the repair closure that is intermediate first. I do a comma, and then the second code would be that excision. Because think about it, which one is worth more? Remember, as far as medical coding, that the first CPT code paid at 100%, second and afterwards CPT codes are paid at a 50% deduction. So is it easier to close up the skin or to cut open the skin? Think of it as, is it easier to break Humpty Dumpty, the excision, or put Humpty Dumpty back together again, the repair closure? Or let's say, is it easier to spill red wine on a white carpet? 3 seconds. Or is it easier to pick up red wine from white carpet? 5 minutes. Don't ask me, ask my older brother, and I do have an older brother. I'm not just saying, ooh, blame my older brother. Let's just say that one fond memory I have is my older brother spilling red wine on a white carpet at my grandma's house. And it took about 3 seconds for that just to spill on over, and it took him 5 minutes to pick it up. So in general, picking up a mess is always more. Fixing it, repair closure, is than the excision making the mess. The only thing we do here though is we would put modifier 51 for the multiple procedures on the excision code because we're doing multiple different procedures. We would not need to do modifier 59 here because the fact that these are clearly 2 different procedures that we're doing repair closure, different concept, different type of procedure than an excision. So based on the procedures just simply being different and be able to describe that easily during the descriptions of it, we'd use modifier 51. So modifier 59, distinct procedural service, think of that as distinctly different. Looking at here, these are 2 distinctly different procedures. So we simply just do 51 and that's good. So repair intermediate, we can also have a repair complex. So the doctor does an excision first, then does a repair closure that is complex. Same principle, we swap them around. So we would code the repair closure first, that is complex, followed by the excision with modifier 51. So if we're doing the repair closures, skin, got a hole, switch it together, sutures, and that's it. If the skin is closed up by simple, then it's always built into the code, so we do not need to code that separately. So if we just code the excision code, no, the doctor is not telling the patient, here's a Band-Aid, put it on you, go home and fix it yourself. They're actually doing the work, it's just bundled into the same code. But we do get the extra credit, if you will, if the doctor does the intermediate repair or the complex repair, we just put those codes first. Now, so besides the repair closures, we also have the oh so lovely adjacent tissue transfer rearrangement. So if the doctor closes up the skin that way, so if we have the excision, and then if the doctor closes it up, not by the repair closure, but by the adjacent tissue transfer rearrangement, that's how I'll acronym it here, ATT/R. Not ATT as in like, hello, can you hear me now? That's the other one. That's the one with the check mark. The globe one, the blue globe. So not that ATT. Adjacent tissue transfer rearrangement. If the doctor closes it up that way, this is where it gets weird. We do not code the excision. We only code the adjacent tissue transfer. And remember, sometimes things just don't make sense. We have to leave our common sense at home. That falls into that category there. Because what makes it weird, though, for me is, well, what if the doctor only does adjacent tissue transfer rearrangement? Meaning, what if the patient already has a hole a hole in their skin, some injury, accident, or whatnot? Just like how with the repair closure, the only time we would ever code a repair closure is if the hole's already there when the patient comes in and then the doctor closes it up that way. Just simple sutures and that's it. But if the doctor does the excision and the adjacent tissue transfer, we'll only code the adjacent tissue transfer. Okay, that would make sense to me. But if the patient comes in where no excision is needed, but the doctor closes up whatever hole after an injury or accident that the patient had, then we only code the adjacent tissue transfer. So that's all that the doctor did, that's all that we can code. So no matter if the doctor does an excision first, then the adjacent tissue transfer rearrangement, we only code the adjacent tissue transfer rearrangement, just like if that's what the doctor, that's all that they do, that's all that we code. I don't get it, but that's just how it works. So for you coders out there, what you can do, for example, on pages 90 through 92 in your 2020 CPT book, what you can do is make a note up on top of those pages, and for example, write down C page 110. So provided if you have free space currently in your CPT book on the 2020 professional version on page 110, you can write this awesome grid down on page 110 and cross-reference it, just flipping a few pages back and forth. So that way you can easily see how the documentation will be as far as the coding, but then on the flip side of it. So again, so left side, how the documentation will state it, but then the right side, the proper procedures for coding it, but sometimes you have to kind of move codes around for excisions and closures. I do hope you enjoyed this episode of the Paul Chandler Show, and have an awesome rest of your night. If you like this video and want to see more, make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's so easy. It's right there. A little button. Just push it. Subscribe. I got all night. Nothing else to do. Just subscribe.